Tony Kinnett.
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 Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's get down to business.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening. It is my genuine pleasure to inform you, the great people out there, whether you are tuning in via the Twitter X live stream or the YouTube live stream over at the Daily Signal, or whether you're catching us on the air, on TV, or radio, it is my genuine pleasure to inform you that actions have Kamalaquences. 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 There are a lot of Kamalaquences in life if you're Kamala Harris, because realistically, there's not a whole lot that you have to look out for, not a whole lot that you have to be on your guard for in this day and age regarding, what it is that you say. As long as you don't do something extremely stupid, things will probably work out fine. And I'm afraid that's not the route in life that Vice President Kamala Harris has chosen. So the debate, which would be on Tuesday, September the 10th, is coming up really, really quickly. This is the last major event before the election. Now, there is supposed to be another debate that is planned somewhere in the ether between Harris and Trump, but neither party has realistically agreed to kind of the specifics of this debate, except the Trump campaign, that is. They're basically in a position now of saying anytime, anywhere, more than happy to do it. And the Harris campaign is, well, we'll get to that. Instead, what we're seeing with this particular debate is the last big event before the mail-in ballots start going out in places like Pennsylvania and North Carolina. And so, in order to give this debate the amount of pomp and circumstance it deserves, at the Daily Signal, I'm actually flying into Washington, D.C. Monday night. Tuesday, we are going to have an ultimate debate coverage extravaganza. We're going to be doing an hour of pre-coverage that starts at the normal time that the show pops on at 7 p.m. Then we're going to cover the debate live. And that means not just the debate will be re-streamed onto our particular programming, it will all be on a separate screen that is next to us in studio. That would be myself, along with my colleagues Bradley Devlin, Virginia Allen, Rob Bluey, several congressmen, political pundits from around the country. And we're going to be reacting to what I'm sure is going to be just an abysmal alcoholic bingo card of a debate. And boy, oh boy, I am so excited to fact check all of the garbage that is going to be spewed out of all of the different various mouths in that room, from the hosts all the way to the debate subjects themselves. So it's going to be fun. Then we're going to do an hour of post coverage, people from the left and the right weighing in, talking about what this means, what it doesn't mean. It's going to be fun. So definitely stop by. I know that some local personalities from around the country on some of the stations we're syndicating on are making a few appearances. It's going to be fun. So I say actions have Kamalaquences. What actions am I talking about that are such a bee under her bonnet? Well, Kamala only had two goals going into this election. Only two. Goal number one was to run as an unknown outsider so that people would not either associate her with Joe Biden's legacy during his administration, which has been very unpopular, and so that by running as an unknown outsider, people wouldn't be able to say, well, then what are your policies, Vice President Harris? What is your plan? What do you actually plan to go out there and do? The second goal that she had was to run on emotionalism, which comes in two parts. Part number one meant that Kamala was to run on this excitement, this vibes-based joy energy from the mainstream media, hoping that would be just enough in this 100-day election cycle to push her over the electoral college hump, especially in those swing states. The other part of that emotionalism was to create a bunch of fear about Donald Trump. Oh, he's big, mean, ultra bad guy Hitler, and he's also knuckle-draggingly weird and stupid, and oh, he's gonna talk over me in the debate and all this other stuff. Well, I'm afraid not. Trump was actually speaking in New York today, and I gotta tell you, this is probably the most reined in and measured I've ever seen the former president. Take a look.
And the Arab nations, and we're very honored to have some of my friends here with us today from that part of the world, but they're working very hard, despite being here, that I not be your president. They don't like me. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris can't bring down the price of anything because her energy policies are driving up the cost of everything is up, way up.
So if Trump actually shows up with a kind of measured approach and focuses on policy, that's a very good sign for the Trump and Vance campaign. Now, the media was trying very hard to accomplish Kamala's goals for her. That meaning that, kind of keep her out of the spotlight, letting her hide in her own little weird corners, and not talking about policy. But Kamala screwed it up her own dang self. I mean, nobody's going to screw it up for Kamala quite like Kamala. And she's done this before in other political campaigns that she's been a part of. Most famously, her 2020 presidential run, in which she goofed up so badly that she wasn't even able to stay in the race to run in her own state's primary. So let's dig into this. Every time Kamala speaks, she reveals more of her policies, the ones she's supposed to be keeping hidden. And these are deeply, deeply unpopular, especially in the swing states. Now, Nate Silver and other right and left-leaning pollsters have her neck and neck with Trump in every swing state except the ones in which she and Trump are within margin of error. This should not be a tied race, given the goals that have been presented from the Harris campaign, and given the amount of money that's being shoved into this campaign left, right, and center. She outspent Trump by over $300 million in August alone. And it's not enough. It's not doing jack squat for her, especially in places like Pennsylvania. And because of this, Nate Silver actually bumped up his electoral college probability in favor of Donald Trump today to 58.2% likelihood that he ends up winning, and Kamala back down to 41.5%. That's not good for the Harris campaign. The gap is widening because it seems that every time they really drive forward, they're making it worse. Now, these horrible policies that she's basically accidentally started leaking to the public include her campaign now refusing to confirm or deny to Axios that she wants to mandate every auto manufacturer be banned from making anything other than electric vehicles by 2030 or 2035. The electric vehicle mandate. Very unpopular in, you guessed it, Pennsylvania and Michigan. And then there's Kamala Harris agreeing with someone on the campaign trail yesterday that, maybe there just need to be laws written just for black people. What?
And we're talking about specifically something that happened to black people here in America. So we have to be specifically targeting to help those people. Because we put those people in a position, and everybody knows the history. Yeah. Everybody understands the history of America.
That's right.
America, you did this to these people. You should write laws for these people. Don't group us in with everybody, because everybody didn't happen to everybody. But let's be fair.
She goes on, she said, that's right, yep, laws just for black people. Segregation's back in style, the old reparation station with Kamala Harris. Yikes. By the way, other Democrats in legal positions, in official positions, are hurting her pretty significantly as well. Here is Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying today that we should just give all illegal immigrants complete and full voting rights.
The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
Oh my. And then, of course, there's Biden actually saying the quiet part out loud, which the Inflation Reduction Act, which Kamala was the deciding tiebreaker vote on, that actually they maybe shouldn't have called it that because it greatly increased the amount of inflation in the United States. This one is wild. Check it out.
My investments, through my investments, the most significant climate change law ever, and by the way, it is a $369 billion bill. It's called the, we should have named it what it was, but...
it should have been called the Climate Change Bill, not the Inflation Reduction Act. My. And that, of course, leads us to Biden and Harris publicly humiliating themselves in the country by trying to use the horrible shooting in Georgia for political gain immediately after the tragedy. So authorities actually arrested this particular school shooter, did not end up killing himself. He surrendered himself to the police. Arrested a 14-year-old male. We're not going to name him on the show. After 4 were killed and 9 others have been wounded during this shooting in this Georgia high school. This was in the Appalachia High School over in Winder, Georgia on Wednesday. And the most damning thing about this entire school shooting, other than the fact that the gun was obtained and owned illegally, was that the FBI had him on their list for like a year and did absolutely nothing but Never wasting a tragedy, of course. Here's Biden talking about how this means that, deer don't need Kevlar vests or something.
But as a nation, we cannot continue to accept the carnage of gun violence. I'm a gun owner. I believe strongly in the amendment, but we need more than thoughts and prayers. Some of my Republican friends in Congress just finally have to say enough is enough. We have to do something. Together, let's ban assault weapons. My dad is a hunter. I don't know a whole hell of a lot of deer wearing Kevlar vests.
Yes, well, if only that was what the Second Amendment were for, and unfortunately for Biden, and fortunately for us, it is not. Again, and I'll point this out very clearly, the guy that committed the school shooting was already violating laws. So just, in case we're saying, a couple of laws ought to do it, the AR-15 was not obtained legally. I don't know if you guys know this, but 14-year-olds cannot own AR-15s in this country. So, And then Kamala did the same kind of stuff, and then suggested, by the way, that, well, you'll have to see for yourself.
But this is just a senseless tragedy on top of so many senseless tragedies. And it's just outrageous that every day in our country, in the United States of America, that parents have to send their children to school worried about whether or not their child will come home alive.
This is from the DA and the Attorney General, who made it very easy for violent offenders to be released back out onto the streets, who raised money for violent criminals who committed horrible, atrocious crimes to be back out on the streets. So, can always count on good old Kamala to stir something in her favor. Up next, we're going to be talking to actor, writer, comedian Rob Schneider just a little bit about social media and about the trend of cancel culture. We'll be back in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal and 93 WIBC.
Hammer and Night. I got jacked, I was on the same track. Back up.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Hey, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated. It is a pleasure and a bit surreal to be joined today by Rob Schneider, who I'm most familiar with for getting me in a good amount of trouble when I was a kid. So, Rob, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm amazed that Disney made those movies back in the day. Or, I guess it was a more gentle time, or it was a time that people didn't take things so extreme. And I think I was very lucky to be able to make those silly movies when I was young at that time, before social media became so judgmental.
Well, I think that social media might have helped me a little bit, and this is the one bone that I have to pick with you.
Tell me.
If you'll bear with me. I got in trouble. It was about 2005, and I was sitting at home, and I was watching The Hot Chick because it was on, and my dad came in, and it was the scene where you were licking the whipped cream out of the coffee cup, and he took one look. My dad, grizzled old Midwestern factory worker, takes one look at the TV, takes one look at me, and says, "Son, what the are you watching?"
Wow.
And my dad, he had some concern. That's always the scene parents walk in.
You know what I
mean?
say about your dad? That is a very good father. He was right. He should have taken that video cassette out at that moment and cracked it in front of you and said, "Don't you dare be have your mind poisoned by this garbage comedy." Well, I will say that, like, it's tough to come in on that scene. Is your dad still with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And we ended up watching it later when I was in high school, and it's very funny.
It is funny. I mean, it's silly. Silly is king, and we were really coming from an extreme silliness, which is the stuff that made me laugh. And the fact that it's people are still, it's still like the number, like in 2000 and what it was like. A couple of years ago, 2022, it was the second most popular movie on one of the platforms. I mean, that's pretty remarkable for something that's 20 years old.
Right. And I think that one of the reasons that it's become so popular is people have started taking the weirdest things so aggressively seriously. And you point this out pretty well in your new book, You Can Do It. And I think that you talk about how the satirists have always been the most in touch with people because they take things that people are taking just so seriously. And it's like, lighten up, take a deep breath and stop treating everything as though it's just the end of the world and we have to prosecute you for it. It's just ridiculous.
But it is becoming that, where they really are getting prosecuted for it. There was I don't know if he's a comedian, but he's a comic guy who was on YouTube that had his dog doing the Heil Hitler salute, which it seems... well, maybe definitely in bad taste. It didn't seem to be something so egregious that it required the police to come to his house and arrest him. Yet that is what happened.
Yeah, it's not like it was a German Shepherd or anything either.
Right.
I got to tell you.
You have to separate that. What kind of dog is it? I mean, did the dog know? Had the dog been exposed to this hate media and hateful diatribes by Adolf Hitler? It's I think what happens is it's a reflexive time, and I don't know. I just had to make that assumption, Tony, that in the 1970s things would continue to be more open and more liberal, and I was shocked by the kind of rubber band slap to the face which happened around the 1980s when the Republicans were in office, and all of a sudden, there seemed to be a slight attack on comedy. Nothing like's happened recently, but there was definitely that famous case, which I talk about in the book, the People versus Larry Flynt, which went all the way to the Supreme Court. And what's interesting about that, because and for your readers who are not familiar with that, Jerry Falwell, which is a very was a very consequential figure in around 1980. During that conservative Republican Reagan era, was very popular, and that's what helped raise Reagan to power. And then there was the most, I would say, the rawest and most obscene of all of the girly mags was Hustler, in its day, and they did a cartoon of Jerry Falwell in a sexual romp with his mother in an outhouse. Now, while that, most people would find that, unfunny, offensive, is it illegal? And that is the case where that is an extreme thing. And what the Supreme Court did rule, and I think rightly so, was would the average person, irregardless of taste, irregardless of its intended humor or harm, would the average person find this to be something that was not believable? And so it's important that the Supreme Court made that decision because they were taking out taste, and they were also not concerned about its comedic, whether it was funny or not. And I would say that that we have not, that social media in our society has moved away from that decision, which again I think was a correct decision, and we've come to a place where now we are deciding to silence those we disagree with, and it's because of their political affiliation more than anything. And that's
it's not even the nature of the joke. It's just whether someone has an R next to their name. Oh man, you can't be making jokes like that. And they send in the feds. It's getting ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I do think we need to be. It's like we need, if vaccines ever worked, and I question that whole theology. And we have a whole, and I know that's a fundamental belief issue that Western civilization is trying to deal with now, especially now that question can be openly talked about in my book and in society after what happened during the COVID scam, where we knew for sure, and doctors knew for sure, that there was cures and that there was existing meds that like hydrochloroquine, like ivermectin, and there was 25 actually. Now, but the only way to get this emergency authorization from the government was to say that there was none, and to silence all those, to get that what the government narrative was to get behind the pharmaceutical companies, which incidentally pay for the FDA, and they pay the biggest contributor to our Congress, to the Senate, to people in the House of Representatives, to our state legislatures, and they killed it. And so that's not freedom, and that isn't. It is a form of tyranny. So we really have to. We've seen that now, and so what we really do need is to re-energize this freedom of speech. And it's a weird way of saying it for somebody who's been so vocal against the pharmaceutical cartel, which is the real drug cartel. We need an inoculation of free speech again. We need to recharge it, because it is the First Amendment for a reason. Even before the founding fathers put in guns, they said, well, the real way to fight tyranny, even more powerful than guns, is our own voice, and our own voice of opposition and dissent. Dissent is the foundation of democracy, and our republic demands it.
To catch the rest of our interview with Rob Schneider, you'll need to head over to the Daily Signal's YouTube page, where we've got the whole interview uploaded and ready to go. We'll be back in just a second with some awful tweets with Jerry Lopez. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC.
Awful tweets, the ones that no one ever deletes. Awful tweets on the Tony Kinnett Show.
On 93 WIPC.
It's that special time of week again. A lot of individuals' favorite segment, Awful Tweets with Jerry Lopez. Jerry, how's it going, man?
Man, doing great. It's the first day of football, and I'm ready to punt some of these tweets.
Well, we have got just a special lineup for you this evening, including a good old-fashioned football submission. Here's how Awful Tweets work. You guys out there find the worst social media posts you can scrounge up on this deep, dark, terrible internet. And I'm not just talking tweets and X posts. I'm saying bring me them from LinkedIn and from Facebook and Instagram and like your second cousin's blog. I don't care. Send it over to us, and then we'll take them and we will slide them out in front of the entire public, and man, they just get worse and worse by the week. So, Jerry, let's do some awful tweets. Up first, this one's from Mark Cuban. He says, so he's talking to somebody, I think an account that posts a lot of economic statistics on policy, and the economic account said that Vice President Kamala Harris proposed a 28% tax on capital gains for any household with an annual income of $1 million or more. So this is Mark Cuban's really big brain business take. He says, Kamala Harris is listening to business people and getting their feedback on what's fair and will lead to more investment in business. She is pro-business, more supportive of entrepreneurs than any candidate in a long time, and it's only going to get better. What do you think of that?
Yeah, there's one thing we know for sure, and it's when Democrats take over, the bureaucratic red tape comes out. And it's going to be no different with her. I don't think she's a big supporter of business. As a matter of fact, didn't they say she's going to tax people unrealized gains 20%, which is ridiculous. So Mark Cuban needs to just go away and stick to coaching or owning a mediocre team.
Jerry, I got a question to ask you. Let's say you're a small business owner and that your business rakes in $1 million a year, and you have several employees perhaps. If you get slapped with a 28% tax on those capital gains, My question is that a very pro-business policy? Does that help you out paying 28% of what you made?
I mean, no, but also don't forget if I have so many employees, I now have to offer health care to everybody as well. So there's a lot of things that Democrats do that are anti-business.
Well, we'll just shuffle right on down the line. And this next one's from the Indianapolis Star, always a breath away from closing its doors. This is from Tony Cook, and this is a new series of studies that they've released from basically on school vouchers and school choice. And he says, in Indiana, the average school voucher recipient has never attended public school and comes from a family earning more than $99,000 a year. $99,000 a year for the whole family, Jerry. The cost of the program has soared, and it's projected to reach $600 million this year. What do you think about that, Jerry?
Yeah, so school choice is near and dear to my heart. As a kid of first-generation Cuban immigrant who could not speak English, I did not have the backing at home to, push me through the education system. What I had was a damn good mom. I went to IPS, and I will tell you the biggest difference between there and when we got married, or my mom got married, we moved to Pike, people talked about college. It was something and now we're out in Hamilton County, and it's furthering the expectation is you're going to go and better yourself. It's not what rap song are you going to come out with or any of this. We don't monopolize anything except for education in this country. And this is a hill I will die on. I don't think Carmel has a responsibility to get your kid to the school, but if you can get your kid from West Washington Street to Carmel, they sure as hell should be able to go there.
So I'm gonna level a few interesting points on this particular series of stories from the Indianapolis Star. Number one is that he makes it sound so, a family earning more than $99,000 a year, Jerry. Whoa! Right. You mean if you have two people both making around $50,000 a year, is that super wealthy or something? Number two,
I mean, when I started working at the help desk in a big national hospital chain here, I was making $43,000, and it wasn't. With a family of four, that's not much at all.
Number two, and this is my personal favorite here. He says the cost of the program has soared. It's projected to reach over $600 million this year. Note he doesn't actually say how many students are in the program.
More students are getting in.
Yeah, but here's the best part. The Indiana budget for the year 2024, all right, funding for K-12 schools was 40% of our budget in Indiana. $44.5 billion, but 600 million. Oh man. Oh, God forbid. Oh no.
Yeah. Hey, let me leave you with this. The number one issue affecting minorities and people of color is lack of education or lack of opportunity. Lack of opportunity comes from lack of education. Lack of education comes from failing public schools. So why would the Democrats want you in a failing public school? So you'll depend on the government when you're an adult. That's the playbook.
Big shocking stuff there. All right, so here this is the Kamala Harris campaign put out some basically false political advertisement posters committing a nice healthy amount of fraud, saying that Kamala's the official candidate of the Philadelphia Eagles and has like a very weird cartoon of her in an Eagles helmet. Only one problem, Jerry. She wasn't actually endorsed by the Eagles, and they made her take all of the signs down.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, but she could have at least picked the worst team, and then they could both just say they suck. You know,
I'm kind of an Eagles fan, buddy. I'm sorry. I really enjoy the culture of fighting even each other when we win a game.
Yeah.
So, speaking of fighting each other, this is from the Daily Beast. They say exclusive. Kamala Harris campaign has shared with the Daily Beast where she worked and what her job was at a franchise in California in 1983. Here's the catch, Jerry. Donald Trump says she never worked at McDonald's at all. But Kamala Harris said that she did. Boom. Fact check, Jerry. What do you have to say to that?
I don't know. I'm going to stay out of this, but I'm sure we can check the resume. It's under Willie Brown's desk, and it'll tell us exactly where she worked, right?
I'm just saying, man. Like,
McDonald's mean anything.
If someone is accusing somebody else of lying, and I say, okay, but yeah, I asked them if they were lying, and they said no. Case closed, ladies and gentlemen. We now rest before you. Oh, goodness.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Well, Bill, we're going to skip our lovely Jen Rubin tweet, or maybe just point out that she said Liz Cheney has more conservative bona fides than the entirety of right-wing punditocracy. But we'll move on from this one because we run a little short on time. This one is just for you. It's our last one of the evening. It says, breaking, First Lieutenant Jimmy McCain, John McCain's youngest son, is disgusted by the Trump campaign's use of Arlington Cemetery, where like a ton of other presidents have taken pictures before, as a political backdrop. And he changed his voter registration to Democrat. He's voting for Kamala Harris. Now, Jerry, you and I have unfortunately spent a lot of time piecing over the importances, the nuances, one might say, of the Army uniform. If you're looking at this photo right now, does that look like a first lieutenant's uniform to you?
So I'm gonna be honest with you, TK. My issue when you sent me this tweet and said, "Look at this," was people in uniform cannot take political stances one way or the other. It's the only people that really don't have free speech because you can't criticize your chain of command. So when I saw him in this picture, I'm like, okay. And then I started thinking, man, he's only a sergeant. Like an E5 sergeant, he has he has the chevron on his shoulder, but the tweet says first lieutenant. So that is, I'm confused.
Oh, come on, Jerry. We all know some sergeant, lieutenant, major, colonels. Everybody knows your command sergeant master. He did boot with Tim Walz.
Yeah, I get it. He went to the Walz NCO Academy. I get it. Okay.
Look, it's probably an old photo. That's probably what's going on here, but it's still so silly. You all can send us more awful tweets. And Jerry, I tell you what, man, these are getting worse by the week, don't you think?
Hey, they're only going to get worse. And now listen, I want to call out some people. I want to get some tweets from Facebook. I know that you guys have good tweets from Facebook. Send those in. We're not going to say your name, but we'll definitely give credit to the poster.
In fact, you can pay us a little more, and we'll show someone else's. I can't legally say that on the air. Jerry Lopez, Indy Spanglish over on X. Awful tweets, great segment. We'll be back in just a minute with Rebecca Downs with some breaking news out of North Carolina. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on 93 WIBC and the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. I'm Tony Kinnett. It's good to be with you. Live on the phone, we've got Rebecca Downs, editor over at townhall.com, with a new story out today from North Carolina. Rebecca, how's it going?
Hi, Tony. Thanks so much for having me on. So we are exactly 2 months away from the November election, but in states like North Carolina, tomorrow they're going to start sending out their mail-in ballots, and early voting is going to be starting soon as well. So the RNC, they've really been on top of voter integrity projects to make sure that this election is conducted fairly. It's going to be a very close and competitive election. So the RNC, as well as the North Carolina GOP, they filed a lawsuit today that is challenging the North Carolina State Board of Elections policy on absentee ballots. So the way the RNC explained this is the new policy, it disregards election laws requiring absentee ballot security envelopes to be sealed in order for the ballot to count. And they're saying that that actually violates North Carolina state law, which in addition to raising concerns about fair elections, it violates the state law. So it's kind of a problem.
Yeah, so this is something that at least has become kind of a top-of-mind issue for a lot of voters over the last couple of years. Again, not just on the right, but also on the left as well, in both primary and in the general election. When you start getting into absentee voting, mail-in voting, I know that Pennsylvania and North Carolina, a lot of things are still up in the air. And one of the concerns that I've seen is that, according to your article, it says this lawsuit comes after the RNC, the North Carolina GOP, and the National Republican Congressional Committee requested a declaratory ruling from the North Carolina Election Board on May 20th about whether basically certain instructions were contrary to the law. So what you have is political campaigns requesting very specific decisions by specific times. Why are we not seeing these kind of statements and decisions coming out way earlier? Why wait until now to start sending these statement outs from state election boards?
That's an excellent question. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that. I wish I did. What I will say about that is that when we don't have those answers, right, when not even political entities who are involved in promoting candidates and wanting people to vote for those candidates don't have answers, my concern is that you have people questioning elections, right, which we're apparently not supposed to do. You get flagged for misinformation, disinformation, the whatnot. People accuse you of being election deniers. Well, to prevent that, these things should be handled more quickly, with greater confidence, so that everybody is comfortable with how the elections are being conducted.
This is one of the things that I think should be a bipartisan moment, honestly. And here's the key, because everyone can say this should be a bipartisan issue, and it sounds really good on air. But I think that you've really hit a really key point there. If there are people that have concerns about the election, and I'm not just talking about Republicans, you have, Stacey Abrams in Georgia, Hillary Clinton in 2016. You have a lot of Democrats that lost primaries that thought things were really shady over the last 2 years. Why would it not be advantageous to come up with a series of protocols and specific rules? I mean, outline to the T what is and is not allowed, and define those extremely publicly. I'm not talking like school website publicly, where it's like on the 815th page and the back end of the fourth link. Why isn't this something that has become a center point of unity and has instead become basically the shady partisan slapfest?
Well, I wonder if it speaks to such deep partisan divides, right? Because we live in such partisan times right now that even issues that should be bipartisan, or really I think it would be more accurate to say nonpartisan when it comes to free and fair elections and how they're conducted, you almost wonder if they're doing, if the states are going about it in such a way so that they could say, look at those Republican election deniers, if you know what I'm saying there.
I really do. And this is one of the reasons that I think that we really should be driving towards very blatant very basic, very obvious, easy to read election laws in this country that I would say should not just be passed in state legislatures, but really should be enshrined in state constitutions, because then once you have that kind of common foundation to build on, I know you and I talk about this quite a bit. We've debated why some states are still swing states, why some states are more safe.
Yeah.
That institutional distrust is you're never even going to be able to begin to repair the trust in local, state, and God forbid, federal governments until you have a good foundation that isn't as wobbly as a three-legged table at Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, that sense of clarity. And I'm so glad you mentioned swing states, right? Because voter integrity should be important in all 50 states in this country. I do think it's especially telling that these voter integrity battles are happening in key swing states, right? We've debated, you and I online separately, as to if North Carolina is a swing state. I do think Trump is going to win it, just as he won in 2016 and 2020. We could never be too sure, can never be too careful. But the RNC also had a win in an even more of a swing state of Pennsylvania, right? That was last month.
Right.
Our editor, Katie Pavlich, covered that. So that also gives us hope that the same thing could happen in North Carolina as well.
And I think that you're right on the money in this particular instance. I know it's not the usual beat that we bring you on the show for, but when it comes to electoral policy, obviously everyone's concerned about how stupid certain members of Congress are being, but it matters a heck of a lot more how Americans' votes at the ballot box are counted, how they're taken in, how they are looked at, so that we can make sure that the sovereign franchise of the citizen is held as, again, the most sacrosanct. You know, while everyone loves to claim the word democracy or republic, it's much more of an in-practice kind of thing than just a soft sentiment to stitch on a thrown pillow.
Exactly. Very true. Truer words never spoken.
Oh, I'm honored. Rebecca Downs, thank you so much for hopping on. Really appreciate it. And thank y'all as well for tuning in this evening. We'll be back tomorrow for one final bit of coverage before the weekend. And then after that, I'm off to Nashville and D.C. for quite a busy couple of days. Make sure that you go over to the Daily Signal. Put it on your calendar. Stop by for our wonderful, huge, ultimate debate coverage. It'll be great. Maybe I'll wear boxing gloves. Maybe I'll get a misdemeanor. Who knows? Anything can happen, probably. Thank you very much for tuning in. You can check out the podcast services. Leave us a review if you like the show. If you don't like the show, stay away from the podcast reviews. I don't want your go leave a negative review somewhere else. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining me. This has been the Tony Kinnett Cast, both on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, and to our partners on radio and TV. Take care.